As authorities investigate the cause of an explosion and subsequent fire at a home belonging to South Carolina Circuit Court Judge Diane Goodstein and former state senator Arnold Goodstein, some Democrats suspect that the Trump administration officials who have been saying all sorts of terrible things about this judge might have something to do with inspiring an attack against the home. Now, let me be absolutely clear. This investigation is ongoing, and so far, authorities have said that there is no evidence to suggest that there's been foul play or arson. However, they are still investigating it. Nonetheless, some of these accusations have led to Stephen Miller melting down, so stay tuned for that. Now, this investigation, again, is ongoing as we speak. Is there a possibility of arson? So far, authorities say they haven't seen any evidence of that, but we're gonna wait until the investigation is finished. Now, prior to the fire, Judge Goodstein had been receiving hundreds of serious threats, including death threats. Before I give you the details on that, any thoughts, Cenk?
I'm worried about it. So when there's a giant fire in the house of someone who's been receiving death threats, you could tell me that you don't have the evidence yet, and I believe you, and maybe it was a coincidence. But my antennas are gonna be up for not a coincidence. So I'm super worried about it.
So there's been a lot made about how, especially after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, all of this rhetoric, all of this vitriol needs to be toned down. What's interesting is that commentary is directed to some on the left, and I agree with it. We need to be very precise and careful with our words. That doesn't mean that we should stop criticizing or critiquing politicians. At the same time, there hasn't really been much said about the violent rhetoric coming from the right. So that's really at the heart of this story and what has led to Stephen Miller melting down. So hop on in, we're gonna take a little bit of a ride and I'm gonna walk you through what's been going on. So, according to local law enforcement, the fire appeared to have been caused by an explosion. Now, Judge Goodstein was luckily not in the home at the time of this explosion and fire. She was apparently out walking her dog, but multiple members of her family, unfortunately, were inside the home, including at least 3 who have been hospitalized with injuries sustained during the fire. So according to South Carolina Chief Justice John Kittredge, Judge Goldstein was walking on the beach when the fire started. Her husband, Arnold as he goes by as well, was in the house with children and perhaps grandchildren. The family had to escape by jumping from a window or balcony. By the way, when the rescue efforts were taking place, the rescuers needed to use kayaks in order to get to the home and rescue the individuals inside. And that's because the home is like on the water and it's hard to get to. Quote, I'm told there were injuries from the fall, such as broken legs. Arnie's injuries may have been the most serious, for he was airlifted to the hospital. So Arnie, again, the husband of the judge, is reported to have multiple broken bones in his hips, legs, and feet due to the fall. The other family member who was reportedly hospitalized with serious injuries was his son, Arnold Goodstein II. Now, let's talk a little bit about why some are suspecting that this could have been the product of foul play, possibly arson. Again, I'm gonna repeat again, there's no evidence of that yet. And there may never be any evidence of that. However, the DOJ had apparently sought the information, including names, addresses, driver's license numbers, and social security numbers of over 3 million registered voters as part of President Donald Trump's March executive order restricting non-citizens from registering to vote, which again, there's no evidence that that's something that's taking place anyway. But the judge stepped in and essentially blocked the DOJ from accessing the information of the voters from the state. So her decision ended up getting criticized by Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon. And the judge's decision was also later reversed by the state's Supreme Court. But the damage had already been done in the eyes of Trump administration officials, in addition to Trump supporters. So in her ruling, Goodstein had stated that handing over this sort of data would cause immediate and irreparable damage by violating people's right to privacy, something I actually agree with. But at the time, Harmeet Dillon, who was nominated by Trump, slammed her ruling and posted on X that the Justice Department's civil rights will not stand for a state court judge's hasty nullification of our federal voting laws. I will allow nothing to stand in the way of our mandate to maintain clean voter rolls. One citizen, one vote. Now, I want to be clear, even though I disagree with Dylan, I don't see anything wrong with that post in terms of inciting violence or anything like that. And then judge temporarily blocks South Carolina from giving millions of voters data to DOJ. But even more recently, literally a day before this fire occurred, Stephen Miller, who is the deputy chief of staff, targeted federal judges in general who rule against Trump in a social media post. So he wrote the following: the issue before is now before us. The issue before us now is very simple and clear. There is a large and growing movement of left-wing terrorism in the country. It is well organized and funded, and it is shielded by far left Democrat judges, prosecutors, and attorneys general. The only remedy is to use legitimate state power to dismantle terrorism and terror networks. So obviously that type of rhetoric makes it appear as though judges who rule against the Trump administration are essentially providing cover for terrorists in the country. And in regard to this judge's ruling against Trump, essentially attempting to block him from accessing the voter rolls.
Let's talk about something that drives every business owner absolutely crazy: trying to hire the right people. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. You post a job and you flood it with resumes, but most of them don't have the right skills or experience. It's a huge hassle, honestly, but not with ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter finds amazing candidates for you, and they do it fast. And now you can try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/TYT. Now here's why it works. The moment you post your job, their smart matching technology gets to work. It's not just sitting there waiting for people to find it and apply. It's actively searching and identifying top qualified talent that fits your role. It sends them your way, and then it does the hard part of the hiring for you. But don't worry, you're still in full control. If you find a candidate you like, ZipRecruiter allows you to send a personalized invite to apply message. It eliminates the waiting game and gets the right people to engage with your job posting sooner rather than later. So ditch the other hiring sites and let ZipRecruiter find what you're looking for: the needle in the haystack. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it for free at the exclusive web address ziprecruiter.com/TYT. Again, that's ziprecruiter.com/TYT. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire.
There were people who have some pretty decent followings on social media posting all sorts of, in my opinion, violent things. So one user with over 11,000 followers replied, quote, "Rain holy hellfire onto these judges who interfere with the executive branch." Obviously not understanding how our system of government works, how we're supposed to have a system of checks and balances, so you don't have an executive branch that gets drunk on power and is never mitigated or checked by other branches of government, including the judicial branch. Now, the next day before the fire, the next day, hours before the fire, Stephen Miller accused another judge, US District Judge Karen Emmergut, of legal insurrection over her blocking the National Guard being deployed by the Trump administration to Portland. New York Congressman Daniel Goldman pressed Miller on the incident over the weekend, saying Trump, Stephen Miller, and MAGA have been doxing and threatening judges who rule against Trump, including Judge Goldstein. Today, someone committed arson. He shouldn't have said that because there's no evidence of that right now, but nonetheless, committed arson on the judge's home, severely injuring her husband and son. Will Trump speak out against the extreme right that did this? So that led to Stephen Miller getting really upset. And to be honest with you, Cenk, I actually agree with getting upset because you're kind of making claims that are unfounded at the moment. There is still no evidence confirming that this was a product of arson. And you're blaming this on the extreme right when there's no evidence supporting that claim. Like, don't do that. So I'll get to Stephen Miller's response to that in just a minute. But what do you make of all of this?
Yeah, so I'm lie where you are. So first, look, it's logical to think that it might be someone who was egged on by the Stephen Miller types and was a right winger who targeted the judge. Like when we didn't know who the Charlie Kirk shooter was, there was logic in saying that it might be someone on the left. But you have to add in, but we don't know because we literally didn't catch the guy in either case, right? So Goldman is being too presumptuous there. I'm not sure that's exactly the right word, but he's presuming too much there. So I agree with you on Harmeet Dillon too. So that line, I will allow nothing to stand in the way of our mandate to maintain clean voter rolls. No, that's normal politics. Look, I don't want the kind of violent imagery. I don't want us being pitted against one another as enemies, etc. But it's a very common political saying, so I wouldn't worry about that one at all. But when you get to Stephen Miller, that's where we have the real problem. So this constant talk of calling the left terrorists. Now, the minute they start calling people internally terrorists, we're in a lot of trouble, okay? Because I don't mean the left wing, I mean the country. Because then we're gonna call everybody terrorists, and terrorist is the most misused word in the English language. And it basically means someone I don't quite like. And so, but if they're a terrorist, you could murder them. So it's just the world's worst word. Used inside the country is an epic disaster. And then this whole talk of legal insurrection, like bring it down, bring it down. That's so like they say, oh, when you criticize the right, oh, you're increasing the temperature, you gotta bring down the temperature. And then they go around going, get terrorists, legal insurrection, right? No, that's crazy talk. And then when you go extra mile and you go, now these terrorists are being shielded by Democratic judges, you're almost putting in there, isn't someone gonna do something about it? And
yeah, that's where I land on this, right? I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So if you are going to demand that the left tone down its rhetoric, how about you take a good look and reassess the kind of communications coming out of the Trump administration, because it's winding people up, making people scared. And yes, I think it's encouraging people who might be unhinged to take matters in their own hands. You need to have agreement on both sides of the political aisle to do what's right and not smear the other side as dangerous or terrorists. And when it comes to judges, that's especially the case because here, I'm gonna fast forward to graphic 9 here, where these threats against judges have definitely been on the rise. Chief Judge for the District of Rhode Island, Jack McConnell, told NPR in August that his court has received more than 400 threatening voicemails, including several credible death threats. McConnell had issued a ruling blocking Trump's freeze on federal aid earlier this year. So every time a federal judge does his or her job and weighs in on something that Trump is doing and decides to rule against it, you have this like angry response from Trump administration officials that winds people up and makes them think, oh, the judicial branch is the enemy. No, federal judges are supposed to do what federal judges do, which is weigh in on the legality or constitutionality of the actions being taken by the executive branch. And the executive branch has the right to appeal those decisions, as the Trump administration has been doing. And let's just be 100% real. The federal courts have passed down all sorts of decisions that I have hated, that I've loathed. I don't then come out and say, these people are defending terrorists and terrorism. I'm not gonna put a target on their backs because I might not agree with their rulings, but this is how our system of government works. And if you're wondering just how often the federal courts have needed to weigh in on some of what Trump has been up to, as of October, Trump has issued over 300 executive orders, proclamations, and memoranda. Between May 1st and June 23rd, federal district courts blocked Trump's actions with temporary restraining orders or preliminary injunctions around 94% of the time. And that's according to data that was analyzed by Adam Bonica, an associate professor of political science at Stanford University, while the Supreme Court reversed those orders in close to 94% of its cases.
Yeah, Anna, to your point, I don't know that there's anybody in the country who dislikes a Supreme Court opinion more than I dislike Citizens United. So I think it destroyed our democracy, along with Bellotti and Buckley v. Vallejo, which were earlier Supreme Court decisions. But that doesn't mean we should go attack the Supreme Court like a bunch of weirdos. And by the way, that would be very un-American. So what do you do then? Well, first of all, okay, you lost a Supreme Court decision. It's called sad day for you. So then what you do is you fight back politically. So if you lose a Supreme Court decision, that one is very hard to overcome. All right, well then put your boots on and let's overcome it. And so the way you do that in that particular case is a constitutional amendment. So that's why I started Wolfpack, wolf-pack.com, now fightcorruption.us, right? So there is a way to do it, there's a pathway to do it, and we will eventually do it. But you handle it that way, not through weirdo anger and like, they're shielding terrorists, do something. No, don't do that. Yeah, do something, pass an amendment, be an American, fight back politically, use our democracy. Lastly, because we're the fairest show in America, Stephen Miller did put in a line there for plausible deniability. Anna did read it to you, but I'm gonna highlight it again anyway. So after he got everybody all riled up about their shielding terrorists and et cetera, he did write in, the only remedy is to use legitimate state power to dismantle terrorism and terror networks, right? So first of all, the judges are not part of terror networks, but he did say the only remedy is legitimate state power. Since we're fair, I'm reiterating that for you.